Hello and welcome to Current Wave. I'm your host, Ayla Wayman, and in this podcast, we meander through our shared delusions and stumble into ethereal shit talking as we dive into the waves of the human experience. I'm so grateful to have you here. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope that you enjoy the ride. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Current Wave. I'm really excited to speak with our guest today, Chiara Christian. She is a writer and a human design guide, and I'm sure a lot of other magical things that we might get into. But yeah, welcome. Thank you for being here.
I am excited to be here. I'm excited for this conversation.
I really wanted to start as someone who doesn't know human design that much. I hear a lot of people, and I think a lot of people actually really don't know that much about human design. People know like their energy type, mostly like that's it, and very little beneath that. And so I kind of wanted to start with kind of just like misconceptions or ways that people kind of use human design on a very surface level and might have very like just that realm of like not really understanding, misconceptions around it, misuse of the system.
Totally. So I feel like my understanding of like how I would explain this question has changed actually a lot over the years. And like now I almost feel like there's more beauty on the surface. Like I've almost come back to like the surface level understanding. But I guess how I would describe it today, if you are familiar with astrology and like looking up your birth chart, so like put in your information and it takes like the data from like your actual birth date. And with human design, it takes two sets of data. It takes both like the data from your personality, like your actual birth date, and then months before your birthday. So it says that we are not like one aspect of consciousness, but we have like sort of two aspects of consciousness. We have this conscious side and we have this unconscious side. So we have the personality and the design. That's more of a sort of technical, if you want to understand where all the numbers and stuff are coming from. Um, yeah, but like to like keep it like super simple, like how I understand human design today is I just use it as like a psychological tool for awareness to understand how we are different from everybody else. We all are unique. We all have different traits or patterns that we were born with. And society, media, family, peers, conditioning wants us all to sort of fit into, to be the same. And human design says we're all different and we all came here to be unique. We all came here to be ourselves. So that's like the more like sort of basic, like I think easier to understand definition of human design.
Yeah.
And then misconceptions. I don't know. I mean, yeah, I would have answered this question like differently in the past.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm wondering actually if you have any like clarification, like any misconceptions you've heard or like you want me to sort of like dive
Yeah,
in.
I feel like what I'm curious about and like trying to ask and understand, and part of that is probably because I don't have a ton of knowledge of this, is like, and I actually love what you've shared so far of this sort of reframe of maybe in the past you've thought of it in a different way. Like maybe you were looking at a lot of different elements of your chart, and now you're saying, oh, there's actually a lot of beauty in the simplicity, in like those higher notes of like being a projector, being a manifesting generator, and like taking that baseline knowledge as maybe the most helpful part, and maybe not getting into the weeds of all of the specifics is sort of sounds like where you've maybe like your own evolution with this system. But yeah, I guess I was just wondering, like, is that baseline knowledge like plenty to work with? Like knowing that you're an emotional authority, a manifesting generator. I'm like a 3-6. Those are my two.
Oh, that's so cool.
And so, those are the things that I know that my environment is mountains. Like that's
Oh my
about
gosh, you grew up in Colorado and love Santa Fe. That makes sense. I'm also
yeah, totally. And and so I'm like, is that oversimplifying the system?
okay. I
Or is that useful?
no, like I love this question. I actually feel like really passionate about this subject because I think no, I think like the beauty is actually in the very like sort of basic, like you're in the centers and understanding your type and understanding your authority. And I guess just like from my own personal experience, I went so deep into like literally every like nook and cranny of human design and went like into the weeds and into like every single gate and line and color and turn and base and like just there's just like so much information which is like beautiful, but I think it actually can become a really big distraction and it can really sort of you can get so lost in trying to understand your chart or all the little things that you don't like live your life or you don't just like observe your life as it is. Instead, you're like looking at like, oh, if I understand like this gate and this line, then like maybe it's going to help me like figure this thing out. And I think it's like the more we try to figure it out, sometimes the more it like becomes distorted, basically.
Yeah, totally. I feel like that totally makes sense of just like being so specific, so caught up in the details and trying to probably once you think like once you have awareness, then you can like fix it or like do it or like make it right, especially in those moments throughout life where we're, looking for that support, which is often when we find a system like human design to understand ourselves more deeply, which is beautiful. And
Yeah.
there's like the deep end of that sounds like kind of how your path maybe went. And with that, I'm curious how you came to human design and like any parts of your personal origin story, your upbringing, or your path that led you to discovering the system and then diving into it. I would love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah, I would love to share. So I grew up like always sort of interested in alternative ways of like looking at the world. I was like into astrology in like high school and was like, oh, that's because your moon signs in like Pisces. And like I was always into like personality type systems. And my mom was also really into that. So I think I was influenced by her as well. But I found human design. I still remember the day I found out, but it was 2018 and it was on a podcast. And then it started doing the rounds on a lot of podcasts. Yeah, I remember looking up my chart in the car and being like, what? Like, what does this mean? Just like steadily over time, I would sort of, Google, look at blogs, like investigate it more. It wasn't like I wasn't immediately obsessed with it, but it kind of was that thing that kept coming back. And I would sort of like go a bit deeper and a bit deeper and a bit deeper. And then the pandemic in 2020 is when I really started to go deeper into human design. And I was taking classes and courses. And I would say, like, during this phase, it was still like a really, like, I think it was helpful. And I was actually staying on the surface, which is like, I know it's ironic coming back to that question at the beginning, but I actually think it was really helpful to have all those basics like, oh, I'm a projector, I have emotional authority, like, wow, that's what it means like to be a 3-5 and to have this third line experience. And all that surface level stuff is really helpful. And then in 2021, I remember listening to a podcast, and this person came onto the podcast and basically was talking about, you know, the founder, Rauhu, and sort of source material and saying how, like, most of the human design that was out there was basically fake or false or like not real human design. Yeah. And I remember being like, oh my God, like shocked by that. So I was like, wait, what? Like, I've been taking in this like fake sort of spiritualized version of human design. So then after that, I went more deeply into the like lectures and teachings of Rahu. And I had listened to some of his stuff before, but I didn't listen to a lot of his stuff. And honestly, he kind of creeped me out. As I think he creeps a lot of people out. But yeah, then I went more into his teachings, and I got access to this huge folder filled with audios and lectures, and just like it's like 50 gigabytes of like original material, and kind of just went ham into it. And so that was kind of the start of like a couple years where I was more intensely sort of rigid and dogmatic, and like these are the true teachings of human design, and like you have to use the correct language, and sort of like, how do you say it? I can't say this, but proselytizing,
Mhm.
like, preaching like, oh, this is the correct way to do human design, and there's an incorrect way and there's a correct way, and like you have to be radical, and you have to be like, you have to adhere to the source material. And I started to take human design much more seriously, and like kind of saw it as like the ultimate sort of truth, or like way to see the world. Yeah, and sort of limited, like I generally, like everything else I was into, I was like, oh, that's just not self, oh, that's just like seven centered um bullshit, which I don't know, like that's sort of like a human design joke of like, human design says we've like evolved into these beings with like nine chakras instead of seven chakras. Like we're not the same humans apparently, as we were 200 or 300 years ago, but we're like evolving. And so human design, like the radical theory would say that these old sort of systems or beliefs were like seven centered, and like almost used as like a derogatory term, like slander.
You only have 7 chakras. You're a lower being.
Yeah,
You're
literally.
operating from the 7 center program, not the 9 center program.
I know. Yeah, it was literally used like that's seven. The yoga's so seven centered. Like, oh, manifestation. Oh, that's like seven centered. Like,
Oh my gosh, that's so interesting. Yeah, like see, I haven't even heard any of this about human design. Being someone who doesn't really know, it's really interesting. And with that, okay, I want to like go into like what would you say is sort of when you were diving into all of this source material and a deeper understanding of human design, how would you like share sort of like an overview of a few things that you're looking at, like the energy types, the authorities, like would you mind laying out a little bit of a structure for people who maybe really don't know and are curious about kind of just what we're talking about?
yeah, like
And maybe a little bit of the history of when it kind of it I really do feel like there was a moment where it was just like on all the podcasts, on everything. I remember when I first heard about it, someone was going through all of the different energy types and I was listening to them and I'd never heard it. And every single one, I thought it was me. Like I was identifying with every single one, which was so funny. I'm a manifesting generator, so not all of them, obviously, but it's just a yeah. Would you share a little bit about like the structure of it or how people can kind of think about it and understand it as this system?
yeah, like what to sort of look out for in your child.
Yeah, just like just kind of like how it yeah, I loved how you were talking about how there's sort of like the conscious part and the unconscious part. And then maybe just like going over a few of like the energy types, a few of the different authorities, a few of the different lines
Yeah,
from a structural perspective. Does that make sense of the system?
I just feel like, what the hell is this? So I guess I'll go back to like the conscious and the unconscious parts of ourselves, and like how it sort of takes that data and then creates your chart. So when you're looking at, if you look up your chart, yeah, you have these things in black and then you have these things in red. And the black is the conscious part, or the personality, or like who we think we are. And then
Mhm.
we have these parts in red, which is our unconscious, our design, can also be seen as our body, and like what other people might pick up on us or we might not even realize is a part of us, but sort of over time we're like, oh, it's interesting that part of myself seems to come out in certain situations or sort of surprise me.
Mm,
So yeah, it says that we have, yeah, we're not just who we think we are. Like we have this life going on and this body doing stuff that like sometimes we don't understand. So okay, I'm trying to like piece together like how to talk about the types. I guess I'll go into the types a little bit. Like so if I were like looking at someone's chart, I think like as you said in the beginning, like if you just looked at your energy type, your authority, and your profile, I think you're pretty good. Like, I think that is like actually the stuff that I come back to. And when you look at your chart, you're going to see almost most people are going to see shapes like the centers that are colored in, and then some shapes or centers that are white or not colored in. And the centers that are colored in are the places that are consistent within us, like consistent energy that we sort of bring to the world. And then the white centers is where we take in the world around us. We take in conditioning. We get to learn about the world through those like white centers, but it can also be where we are sort of pulled away from ourselves, or we might try to think we have to become more like that instead of realizing like, oh, I don't have to be like this, be like the people who have the centers colored in, those
mm,
shapes. So it's like a really useful tool to see like, okay, where am I colored in? What is consistent within me? What's inconsistent? And then the only of course, if you're a reflector, you're going to be the only type that has like your whole chart is white or like undefined, but that doesn't mean like a lot of reflectors say when they pull up their chart, they're like, is this broken? Like what? Like I don't get it. But it's not broken. You still have consistent parts of you, but you're just a bit different to the rest of us with colored centers. So yeah, I say there are, five types. Some people would argue there are four types, but five types. There's manifestor, reflector, projector, generator, manifesting generator. And basically those types are determined by what centers you have colored in.
mm.
Uh,
That makes sense.
yeah. So if you like to read the chart, like you don't actually have to look at, because I know when you pull up your chart, it says like manifesting generator, like it says all the stuff, which is so helpful. But you could technically just look at the chart and like look at like what is colored in and sort of figure it out. But yeah, I guess I mean you should start with the generator and manifesting generator. And that some people say there's four types and they sort of lump them together, but they are slightly different. But what makes them similar is that they have a defined sacral. And so I'm going a little bit all over the place, but the other thing about the different types, what sort of also determines the types is that every type has a different aura. And
Mm,
that's really like what human design or like the chart is saying, is that we all have different auras and like ways we sort of interact with the world. Um, so with the generator and the manifesting generator, they have this defined sacral center, which is about life force energy. And really like their whole like mission in life is to honor their life force energy and, you know, say yes to things that will generate and produce more energy, and look out for when you're saying yes to things that you actually don't have a response for, you actually don't have the energy for, which will tend to make you more frustrated or depleted or like, yeah, generators and manifesting generators really are like the life force energy of the planet. And when they are honoring their response and sort of, I feel like they get into this flow where it's like they're being pulled to like thing to thing to thing. And it's like, when they're following that response, it's almost like, oh my god, like more energy is building and more energy is building. It's just like they have this open, I think I did say open enveloping aura, and it's just sort of like warm and like juicy. I don't know how else to describe it. Um, but they almost have this like buzzy feeling when they're like really lit up by um something they're responding to, whether that's, a conversation, a podcast, activity, exercise, like something that they're doing that's like, oh, like you get that almost physical, like I see it like physical movement towards something or someone. Yeah.
Yeah, that really resonates as a manifesting generator. Like, even yesterday, I was really in a flow of coming into contact with things that excite me. And I could barely go to bed. I felt like I had drank like 5 cups of coffee and I hadn't had any caffeine yesterday. But that energy does build. Like, I just kept coming into contact with ideas that inspired me and like things I wanted to do. And it will propel me. And it's just so energizing and so propelling. And exactly as you said, like the opposite side of that is when I'm doing things that I don't like or that don't resonate, I feel like I'm going to die. That frustration is something that I think I've spent a really big portion of the beginning of my life in, just like that feeling of just hitting a wall over and over and over again and feeling so frustrated and like really depleted by the things that I'm doing. And I've been slowly like inching my life toward the things that I love that energize me. Like the world is just not set up, unfortunately, yet. I'm really optimistic about where we're going. But for us to all like be in our zone of genius, like be in the things that we love for any energy type, having like all of us, I think, often in periods of time, like have to live our lives by the conditioning of the collective and like have to make money in a certain way and do all of these things. And I'm like, gosh, it would be so amazing if everyone could just be in their own flow and system. Like, I think we would all be so much healthier and happier and everything would go well. So
Right.
that makes sense. Not to derail you, but I was like, oh, yeah, I just really relate to that.
No, I'm so glad you shared that. And yeah, I really see with generators and MGs, it's like even if you can just notice, like even if you can remove one thing off your plate that you don't have to do. Because I feel like with generators and MGs, there's this feeling of, oh, I have to do it. Like it's just like, oh, I have to. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, some things that you don't actually have to. Or is there a way that you could do that thing that would feel more energizing? Like that's also because yeah, as you said, it's like sometimes you really can't get away from like, okay, you have to do your taxes, you have to pay your bills, you have to like do these things that are not that exciting.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like the more you tap into like more you honor your response and like find the things that do bring you energy, yeah, it does like revitalize your system overall. So yeah,
Yeah.
I love my MGs. I love my generator friends. So with let's see. Okay, with the projector, so I'm a projector, and they say the projectors are more of the guides of energy and they're not here to be the workers, if that makes sense. So, with generators and MGs, they have more of a consistent life force where they can sort of like keep going and keep going. And the more they do, like that actually they have a response to, it's almost the more energy they get.
Mhm.
Versus projectors have an undefined sacral. And so it's almost like they have a bit more of limited energy per day and have to be a little bit more discerning with how they use their energy. And projectors, like, honestly, I think projectors are here to be more of the lazy types. And like, we're really like focused on efficiency and we can like work really hard, but it's like we really like thrive when we can guide other people's energy, when we can sort of do things in a really efficient way that takes less energy. And I think what I forgot to mention for the generators is that the like signature theme is like when they're like really, in flow and like feeling like themselves is like satisfaction. Like the feeling of satisfaction after you use your energy in a way that feels really good. Or like at the end of the day, you're like, oh, like, damn, that was a really good day. And it's like you just like did stuff all day that just felt really like regenerating, really. And then for projectors, the signature theme of like when they're in alignment is success. And it's this feeling of like sweetness in a way that like life gets to be easy and I don't have to like push myself into the ground. Like life sort of comes towards me, and yeah, I don't know how else to describe it except there's this sweetness of feeling like recognized by your relationships, recognized by the people in your life, recognized for your work. Yeah, recognition is a really key piece for projectors, and they sort of want to be recognized for their perspective, for their intelligence, for what they share, what they see. So yeah, for projectors, it really is about like seeing and mastering systems, and yeah, that's where they tend to find their success. And like in saying this, because I know like in some of the like radical human design, it's like, well, generators are here to work and projectors are here to be successful. Like generators shouldn't be guides. And it's like, no, like, generators have like also a unique perspective to share and can guide other people too. Um, yeah, it just comes through like differently, I think, from the different types. Um, so yeah, that's a little bit on projectors. Do you want me to keep going? Or-
Yeah, if you just want to touch on the other ones, I know I'm just curious, but we don't have to go super deep, but I love it. Thank you so much for sharing all of this.
Yeah, of course. So manifestors, what like defines a manifestor is they have a motor connected to the throat, and they also have like an undefined sacral as well, like the projector. But manifestors are really here to create impact. They might not even realize how much of an impact they have on the people around them or the world around them. But yeah, it's like they really are here to initiate and sort of be the like fire starters in a way. Like they're the ones that are like, right, I'm going up and I'm going to start this thing. And they kind of tend to just be able to move versus like when you think about generators and MGs, they almost need more of a response. Like they need something to sort of like respond to sort of pull them into action. But manifest is kind of just like do the thing, if that makes sense. Um, so they're really gifted at that. And they are, yeah, an energy type, a solar type, and are here to start things basically. They're a little bit more like impersonal compared to generators and projectors. Like it really is about like, yeah, what they do and what they create. Yeah. And also, I guess the thing about manifestors is I actually really feel for manifestors because I think other people struggle to read them. They're kind of hard to read because you almost just never really know what they're going to do. Um, they kind of like I think of them like the renegade, like like not the chaos card. I don't want to say that, but like a wild card. Like manifestors are the wild card. They're always going to create change and create something new in whatever environment or situation they sort of find themselves in. Yeah.
Thank you. Incredible. Do you want to touch on reflectors quickly?
I'll touch a little bit on reflectors. I know I just get like I kind of just go off on a tangent. I'm
I
like,
love it.
yeah, but just to quickly touch on reflectors, reflectors are apparently only like 1% of the population, and they have, yeah, the whole chart is sort of white, and they are here to really be like, they sort of reflect back the environment and are really like the collective judges in a way. Like they're really good at judging sort of the health of an environment or a community. And yeah, they're very like the wisdom that they have and able to see the collective in more of this broader way, I think is different to any other type. And also for them to realize that what's like consistent for reflectors is that they're consistent over the cycle of a month, but like day to day might feel like they're changing every day. Like one day they might feel really energized and inspired and like let's go. The next day they might feel like a little bit more mellow, a little bit more chill. So even though it looks like they're inconsistent, their consistency is really like over the course of a lunar cycle, over the course of a month. So yeah, that's a little bit on reflect.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. I just wanted to kind of give, I don't know, people a little bit of a baseline if they were really new to this system. And yeah, okay, I want to go back into your story. So you found all of this information like started to get more deep into the source material. And then it sounds like you went through like a really dogmatic period of really integrating this information in a specific way. I would love for you to share a little bit about that and like this notion that you've been sharing a little bit online of like how this like really fucked you up in certain ways, because I think that's really real. Like I think that in various systems or just ways of thinking in general, like we can get so buried in the details and thinking that we need to like be a certain way even within that system. And it's interesting because what you're sharing about human design really showing us that like each of us is really different and we are here to have these different experiences on earth and we're not all supposed to have the same thing happen. And I feel like so many of us just like want to be told what to do and how to do it so that we can like live life correctly and like be successful in some sort of way. And I think that for me, like that, yeah, I haven't gone deep into any system. I'm a student of astrology and some other things, but you know, being a manifesting generator, I'm on the go. I'm on the go. And so I just like love speaking to people who have gone deeper into something. So, yes, would love to just hear like that journey of going into it, how it didn't work, and then like coming back out.
Yeah. So I guess I want to start with pointing out, like, I don't think this is like just a human design thing, like as you said, or like, oh, it's because human design is like fucked up and it's like it's because of the system. Like I definitely think it was my relationship to it. And like of course like there was a like group or like community of people who also sort of thought was thinking the same way, but I think like I can look back on my life and I sort of came to a lot of different systems and modalities with this very like perfectionism sort of mindset, and like I have to do it right, or I have to do it like there's only one way to do it correctly,
Yeah.
and you know if I do it incorrectly then I'm going to feel guilty. And like yeah, I think I've experienced that pattern in like so many different ways, but I think it just came to a head in human design. And honestly, I like to say I think it was my like final boss moment where like now I'm like, no, I'm done. Well, I would like to think I'm done with sort of like holding so rigidly to any one thing. But yeah, like I guess during that time I did just have a very sort of yeah, black and white type of approach to human design. Um I also like I didn't mention my story, but I like in the previous question, but I found human design at 21. And like 21 is so young. I don't know. It's funny. I mean, I'm only in my late 20s now, but just like, and it found me also at a time when I was just in a really vulnerable place and like really struggling in life. And yeah, as you said, like I really wanted something to tell me like what to do and like who am I?
Yeah.
And I think like so many of these systems and like, you know, even yeah, astrology or tarot or like these sort of spiritual systems, I think can find people, like people often gravitate towards them when they're feeling vulnerable or when they're feeling challenged or going through a breakup or an existential crisis or like something where they're like, I want something to give me certainty or to tell me what to do. And so I yeah, also want to say I think at 21 it's like I I didn't really know who I was. I mean, I did a little bit, but it was so like, oh my God, this system can tell me like who I am and what to do. And like, this is going to be the ultimate answer to everything. And I think the belief that, yeah, if I just follow the rules perfectly, then my life's going to be okay. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
that control piece of like, if I do it perfectly, then it's going to be good. I'm going to be okay. I'm doing things right.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you'll have it figured out. It's all going to work out under those strict rules that you put on yourself.
Right. Which
Really relatable at like different periods of time. Yeah.
totally. And it's like, that's a, you know, it's a, what's the word? It's like that's a genuine desire. Like, that's not a bad thing to desire, you know,
Oh,
things to be okay. But I think, yeah, it's like when we take any sort of rules, any sort of system or things that tells us who we are so seriously, or so like, oh, this says that I am like this. And then slowly over time you start to like ignore your inner authority or that feeling inside. We start to not trust ourselves as much as these systems. So it's like it's the same with like right now I keep getting the like pick a card reading, like tarot readings on my TikTok. And I hate that I love them. But I'm like, okay, Kiara, like we can't. But like I used to like love them. Because it's like they give us this sense of they like tell us like what like we give our authority to these systems or like things like, oh, tell me if I should break up with this person, or like tell me like what I should do with my life right now. Like tell me that everything's gonna be okay. And I actually think it's so scary for like people to realize it's like, oh, like only I have the answer. And it's like it's not that we can't use these like systems or tools or modalities like as like helpful information. And you know, we can take advice from people like that we trust. But I think for me it really was like a journey of like learning to be okay with uncertainty and not having it figured out. So I was just constantly spiraling about the future and about life and about what am I going to do, and like yeah, realizing that you can only take it day by day, and
Yeah.
like yeah, there is no certainty through life, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I think that's so like that is so natural, and especially I feel like our early 20s for a certain section of people. Like sometimes it does look like there are people who just like know what they're doing and have it figured out. And then if you aren't one of those people, I think that sensation of not knowing like what you're going to do, how you're going to make money, like where you're going to live, who you're going to be in like romantic relationships with, or whatever your own inner questions are, like it does make sense to the impulse. I understand the impulse that all of us have to look externally for those answers. And like when we find something that has a lot of information that does answer some of our questions, it's like I found the thing. I found the golden ticket in a way, until you really, start living it and realize this is just information that's helpful. And I still have to figure out my own relationship with how I move through the world and my own. Yeah, I mean, I think of it as like developing trust in ourselves. Like, and that only comes, I think, to some people over time. Like, we sometimes have to build that trust within ourselves that we do know the answers, that like I used to have a really hard time making decisions and was so scared of making the wrong decision all the time. And I don't even exactly know when I grew out of that. It just took the repetition of like making a bunch of decisions all of the time. And sometimes it wasn't amazing, but it was like the right thing that I needed to go through. And then you realize that you will survive so many things that feel impossible at the time, and that's just life. You just get used to living, I think, as part of it. But that, yeah, it makes sense to lean on to something that gives you a lot of answers of how to be and how to relate to the world. And it seems like there's an aspect of human design that gives you a lot of specifics to work with on like the deeper layers. And then you can be like, I do this. This is how I move through the world. And it feels like a map. So when you were living that way of like really in it, like what were some things that were happening? Like how did that way of utilizing this information not work for you?
Yeah.
What went wrong? Tell us the details. We want to know.
Yeah. Well, yeah, my hot take, but I think strategy and authority, which is one of the most like when you look up your chart, says like this is your strategy, this is your authority. I actually think it's one of the things that fucks us up the most. It's not that exactly, but it's like when you take it so literally and seriously, and especially I see this a lot with projectors. I think a lot of projectors went through the same thing where it's like, oh, I have to wait to be invited. And
Mm.
you take that like just so like literally of like, I'm never going to reach out to anyone again. I'm never going to apply for a job. I'm never going to like speak to the cashier first, like at the coffee shop. I'm going to like wait for everyone to approach me because that's how you experience, interaction, or like you
Mm.
experience less resistance if you don't. Because, they say the projector aura, I didn't even get into the auras and the types, but anyway, they say the projector aura is like focused and penetrating. And because it's so focused and penetrating, you have to be invited. Otherwise, yeah, you're going to experience resistance or it's incorrect.
Mm.
So I think the biggest thing for me actually was that like messed me up was the invitation, where I basically just stopped living my life for like years. Just kind of sad. But I mean, even with like, I was doing some human design readings, but I would sort of talk myself out of creating new business offers, or like would constantly overanalyze like maybe this wasn't correct to like start a Substack because I wasn't invited. Like literally just taking it so far and almost becoming insane with like overanalyzing every decision. And kind
Yeah.
of like what you said, it's like you just have to sometimes you just have to make decisions and trust, like that's how the self-trust builds, is like, oh, I'm going to be okay. But yeah, I got myself into such a state that I didn't trust myself to make decisions because I was like, didn't trust that I would make a correct decision. And then what else would I say like doesn't work? I mean, I think, yeah, I think just diving too deep into all the details can just like, not everyone, again, it's like, there's people like you, that's why it's like this only specific people sort of go like this, like, I don't know, have this sort of experience. Like my experience is definitely not everyone's. But if you tend to just like obsess over all the details and want to go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, I think that's kind of dangerous. And I think you kind of have to step back a little bit. Like I was sort of reading all the cosmology lectures and like going really deep into the hours and like variables and just all this like, and I think like again, like, yeah, it's like I had so much information. I had like inundated myself with information that I ironically it was like so out of my body, when like human design is actually meant to get you in your body. But I'd gotten so mental and just so like, yeah, just lost in the weeds. And like going back to what I said in the very beginning, it's like human design is actually meant to help you trust yourself and be yourself and like be in your body. And I mean, I think like, the person who came up with this system, it's like I have more of this, I don't say cynical perspective, but just like realistic perspective of like he had to make money, like he had a business, like he ran all these courses and came out with like new information and new details, and like of course it's all interesting. I just don't think it's very practical or useful. But then also, like, I want to say, I think if you trust yourself enough, like, if you trust your experience, if you finally got to the place where you trust yourself to make decisions and you trust your own experience and you can, like, actually check in with yourself, I think that's when the information you can look at it and it can be interesting. But I think when you're in a state of not able to trust yourself, that's when more information is usually not a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that experience is so helpful to share, honestly, especially for people who are like growing up and like becoming who we are is not an easy experience for a lot of us. And I think that we kind of like sugarcoat it, and there's a lot of rhetoric like in the ether right now of it's like easy to become who we are. And I haven't had that experience. I think that's like why I was drawn to you, because you're speaking really openly about like the challenges and like the way that your own mind was taking this information and like keeping you in this cage of your own making, like because you just didn't know better yet. You just like were learning and looking for answers and wanting to know yourself, which I think is like one of the most human things ever. I think that's kind of why we're here, is to learn who we are and how we move in the world. And like once we get to a certain point, then we really can be in service to the people we're meant to serve also. But we also have to know who we are in order to do that. And when you're 21 and you find this system and, you know, like your own psychology just was working with it in a really specific way that ended up being really constricting, it sounds like, and like limiting to your life. But like that's really relatable, even if someone doesn't go into a certain system or go into the depths and the weeds of something. I think we're all prone at certain moments to like create a cage for ourselves, whether that's just simply like through perfectionism or like that indecision. I think a lot of women, especially, I find like can get really stuck in these in our own loops. Like we're so aware and we're so wanting to take in all of the information before making a decision, and you know, wanting what's best for us, but also often, you know, thinking about everyone that decision is going to affect, which is beautiful and keeps people so stuck in their own things, their own ways of being that are just not optimal for us or like the people that want to be in contact with our work, that want to be in contact with our writing. You know, like you hesitating to start a Substack at some point because you weren't invited. And, you know, in a way, it's like you're not sharing your magic with everyone when people do that and put all of these constraints on the self. And I think that it's just something I see a lot and really experienced in my own way in different periods of time of like thinking I can't do things for some reason, like whether that's the containment of how my human design is or just a thought pattern. It's still the same like cage that we're creating for ourselves. So, yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think it is really relatable in that context, even if someone's not doing making the cage out of human design. Yeah. So then how did you transition out of that way of using this system into like something new?
Yeah, it definitely like was a process that I think took a couple of years, like took a while, like it wasn't like an overnight thing. I think it was just slowly starting to question and challenge and sort of, yeah, I was just starting to question. And I was starting okay, so many pieces, but like I guess one of them was like I was starting to be more honest with myself and my own life experience, and like just ask myself the question of like, is this working for me? Like, is this way of living working for me? And like, I know that's such a simple question, but like, even saying it now, it's like, it's kind of one of the deepest questions you could ask because it really gets your like, shit, like, to get like really real with yourself. And, you know, because I was taking the invitation so literally and living radically according to my strategy and authority. And yeah, I was living this kind of really insulated, small life. And just over time, I started to feel like worse and worse. And like, I think as an emotional authority, like, this is how I understand, I think this is for anyone, but like, how I understand now my emotional authority, like the feelings or like the, I guess the emotional lows or like the negative emotions was actually a sign that I wasn't listening to myself and like something was wrong in a sense. And like what I mean by wrong is just that I was like disconnected from, like I like to say, like my spirit,
Yeah.
literally, like my sense of being alive, like my sense of life force. Or yeah, I felt disconnected from myself. And I think that's why I just over time I was feeling, you know, more depressed, more sad, just more like, yeah. And then yeah, asking myself like, okay, like, is this way of living actually working for me? And I got to the answer of like, no, it's not. And I think there, once I, like the time of having that awareness or coming to that understanding of like, okay, this way of living's not working for me, it actually took time to like actually do, like to actually change. Like I had that awareness, but even I remember I was like I really wanted to like work at a coffee shop for some reason, but I was like, I can't have a projector, like I have to wait to be invited. Like So I was starting to open myself up to like, okay, maybe I could start applying for jobs again, or like, not wait for the invitation. In the beginning of that process, like it felt wrong. And then I would have moments like, well, maybe it's because it's not correct for me. Like maybe like, so it's like the belief and like, I don't know if it's like cognitive dissonance or like challenging a belief feels really uncomfortable at first and can feel wrong, but it doesn't mean that it is wrong. It's because like your belief or like your comfort zone or like your body is so used to living in a certain way that I think it takes time to like rewrite that, like unwire those like patterns. So I think it took me like honestly nearly a year, or like yeah, almost like a year to like really unwrite that story and to finally like yeah, just trust myself again and to stop thinking about human design so much. And so I did get a job as a barista um, for a while, and that actually helped me so much for like I think it was like 8 or 9 months. I just put human design to the side and like did not think about it, did not engage with it, did not read anything about it. And I think that period really helped me fully transition out of that phase. And then yeah, it's interesting that I sort of came back to it, but yeah, it's like I had to sort of take that break to sort of come back to it in this new way that feels more like integrated based on my own experience versus just parroting the theory of like, oh, well, the information says that you have this or this means that and like blah 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 blah. But
Yeah.
yeah, so
Yeah. I mean, I love that. I think that especially when we kind of go on a really intense path with something, like that's how you really gain true wisdom of like the lived experience of doing it in a way that didn't work and then finding a way that does. Like, I really trust those guides and those people so much more because, as you said, like you're just not able to parrot the information because you know the experience. Like, it becomes that lived experience, which is how I think is like the only way we can gain true wisdom. Sure, we can have knowledge, but it's different because it's embodied. It's like, I think knowing the wrong path and living like the wrong path, I don't mean that, hold that lightly because I don't think there's any wrong path, but going down a path that's like challenging and maybe distorted is really helpful to being a guide, to being someone who's able to really support people. Because when we're really supporting people like on the deepest layer, I think you are coming up against like all of our own weird ways of being that can like derail us from our lives and ways of thinking. And so, like, you've cultivated that experience and probably know that experience in such a different way than others. And I think that's like really beautiful and valuable and interesting.
here.
And then I'm curious, okay, I just have a few more little questions of like right now I'm thinking so much about the collective's view of manifestation and like what we're talking about with that. And I've also seen that you've had sort of like this rejection of manifestation and then this like reintegration of manifestation, which I like love this. I love the rejection of things and the integration of them. And because I just like maybe very differently, I think that there are no rules in life. Like I'm like there's some like big broad sweeping like truths and ways of being, but more so just for our own way of living. We're so inclined to just make all these constraints for ourselves, and I think that keeps people so stuck. And a lot of people who I know who are really successful, they're like, oh no, no, you don't have to do like any of that. Just like skip the ideas that you have about the world and just do what you know to be true in your core.
Yeah.
And I feel like that kind of like plays with manifestation in this, I don't know, in this way. But I would love to hear like why you were not into manifestation and then how also you like brought that into your life and how you think about that word and that process.
Yeah. So it's interesting because I actually like kind of was into manifestation before human design. Um, but yeah, I think I mean human design, yeah, the radical version of it, it's really anti sort of yeah, it's so anti manifestation or like it basically it says that like that all manifestations like rooted from the mind and like we're here to make decisions from the body. So that means like manifestation is bad or like incorrect or like you're just creating from the mind. And so honestly, like yeah, during that period of human design, like a deep radical human design, yeah, I was so like I don't know, like the mind doesn't know what's correct for us, but like it's just very interesting now because like now I kind of believe like the mind is the only thing that like we actually need to like heal, like that is the most like important seed of everything. And like it is funny because like now looking back on like some of the human design material, it's like even in some of those lectures, it would say like the mind is the only thing that can be healed. The body is kind of perfect, the life is perfect, but it's really a matter of like perspective that changes everything. And actually, like, okay, what you said, like, so many things have clicked for me the last like 6, 7 months or like last year. Yeah, it's like the most successful people in life, like, they know there are no rules, like, they just like do it, like, they just have the audacity and they just like fucking do it. And I think actually, I think my experience with human design, sort of like now why I've come back into like manifestation is like I can kind of see how that experience, like that couple of years, was like what I was creating, like was like
Mm.
my life kind of was like what I was manifesting, like because my thoughts were constantly focused on like what's going wrong, like my insecurities, like feeling like I didn't have enough money, feeling like I wasn't enough, like feeling really lonely. Like I can like I think that's why I've come to manifestation now because again like the lived experience of like oh my god, like I was totally like creating that version of reality for myself. And like now how I really see it is like okay, like everything starts as a thought, and then the more you think that thought, it becomes a belief. And then the beliefs that we hold create certain feelings or emotions in the body. And then those emotions, or like how we feel, tends to condition how we act or behave. And then that, like, that sort of chain process, like, then affects the physical world or like creates your layer of reality. So, like, I can really see, like, yeah, with human design, it's like the belief that like I am a projector or like the belief in certain things can really condition your yeah, affect what tends to like come to fruition or what tends to manifest. Yeah, I know this is all over the place.
No, it's great. I think that that makes a lot of sense, and like that these ideas kind of coincided because you were really looking, you started to look at your lived experience and notice, okay, I was having all of these like negative beliefs and thoughts, and like it sounds like a lot of inaction because you were waiting to be invited, and it wasn't really creating the life that you really wanted to live. Like the question of like you asking yourself like is this working for me, like do I like this?
Yeah, do I like my life?
You're like no, this isn't it. And then just having like that turn of realizing that your mind is really powerful and maybe that is the only thing that needs to kind of shift in order to create something new. And then like I think that is basically and very simply like what a lot like what we're talking about when we talk about manifestation of like desire, like thinking, desiring, wanting something and co-creating it. And I think there's a lot of different details, but just that really simple reflection of like the internal and the external and how they're definitely playing with each other. Like I don't know to what extent, but you know, I've experienced that too, like time and again, like when I really am like cultivating a beautiful world inside of myself, I tend to see that externally as well. And I really do think that the universe confirms our beliefs. And, you know, if we're thinking everything is really messed up, we're going to see that. And if we think that there's a lot of good things happening, we're going to see that. And so even just like on that really simple simple way. Yeah, okay. Thank you for sharing that. I love that because I think that that's also really, I think people are questioning, like, what am I doing? Who am I? Like, what is my power to create the life that I want? Because I think that that's a question that leads a lot of us down all sorts of paths to just like find our place in all of this. So, the last thing that I wanted to touch on, which I really know nothing about, but I've seen a little bit about, is like this shift that's happening in 2027 of like moving from, is it tribal to individual? Like, I'm not even sure how to ask the question because I think all of us have this sense, and in a lot of different lineages, this is a time of various prophecies and various shifts. And so I'm really kind of exploring this right now and really interested in different lineages that have a shift that occurs around this time of 2027. And I would love to just hear a little bit about like the energy we've been in and then what we're moving toward. And also your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Yeah, sir. I love what you said about like this is not just specific to like human design, but like in so many like prophecies, lineages, yeah, things of like us saying the same thing basically. And even I think like the way like even if you're not into like any of this like weird shit, spiritual stuff, like I think people are noticing it's like the world is changing. Like things feel unstable right now. Things feel really different. So yeah, from the perspective of human design, we've been in this sort of global cycle from since like the 1600s to 2027, which has been called sort of the cross of planning. It really has been about it's been about sort of the community, yeah, tribe being the community. It's been about planning sort of infrastructure and organizations. And I think about like, the education system and the healthcare system and like, the amount of infrastructure and like, the rise of the global population in like the last even like 100 years. Like it wouldn't have been possible if we weren't able to plan cities and like structure society in a way that could support this many people on the planet. Like even thinking about like the grocery store, like
Yeah.
the fact that we could just go to the grocery store and like pick up ingredients that traveled like miles and miles away from like across the country or even like across the world. So it's like, yeah, I think of globalization and the ways that the world sort of, yeah, came together, like different sort of supply chains, like, yeah, this very sort of global community. And I think what we're seeing now and what's been happening, so these transition, like the transition into this new age, like whether you call it 2027, the age of Aquarius, whatever you want to call it doesn't happen overnight, but it's been happening over, the period of, I mean, I would say the last 20 to 30 years, especially like since, the internet, um, and just so much more technology. But we are moving away from more of this like centralized community to more like everything's feeling more decentralized. And in a way, like, yeah, there's less sort of community. I mean, I even like, I think about just the rise of like, yeah, people feeling more isolated or like lonely or like we're more separated from our tribes or our like local like, well, actually I have thoughts on that, but yeah, the idea of the collective community, the idea that like, the government is going to take care of us or like these sort of collective structures are going to support us or know like the correct way for us to live. But we're moving into this age where it is becoming more individual and we can see people sort of like there's like people are really following their own path. Like there's no more like correct path, I don't think, anymore. And I think we're being asked to, yeah, to rely more on ourselves, which can be a bit scary for people to hear. And yeah, it is more like personal, more individual. But just to touch on like the tribal piece, because I think sometimes when I talk about like moving more into individuality, people sort of get scared of that, or like, well, like what about collective values or the collective? And how I see it is that I think we're going to be more focused on like our immediate tribe or like our immediate communities, and not so much on the global community, the global sort of collective. Yeah, I that's kind of, yeah, how I see it. That the collective is kind of breaking down. It feels more like fragmented. Like there's these pockets of like groups of people
Yeah.
everywhere that are becoming, I think, more like tighter, but it's like, yeah, it just, I don't know how else to describe it. It's more fragmented, but also like a great opportunity, like to be more individual, like than ever, I think, than we've had in the past.
Yeah.
Yes, that makes
Thank
sense.
you. Totally. No, it's honestly, it's so exactly what I was like curious about because I'm on this whole wavelength too of just getting a lot of information and like, and I think, yeah, what you said, like, if we're the age of Aquarius being this new energy or whatever, yeah, however we're thinking of it, because there really are different paths that all speak to this shift in the same thing. And so I think that it's really fun for me to kind of like find all of these different threads and hear about them. And I'm like seeing that already in the collective. And I really think that's where we're going. Exactly what you said, like coming back to our immediate small communities. And I just recorded a podcast yesterday about that in a way of just like the focus is shifting. And I just like think it's so wild everything that you said because it's exactly what I've been thinking and feeling and talking about too of like we needed this period of time to build the infrastructure, to build civilization in the way that we have, and like that has brought really amazing things and has been, I guess, necessary because it's what happened. And now I feel like there really is this new chapter opening, and it is scary because no one really knows what it's going to be or what it's going to look like. And as you said, I think it does put a lot more responsibility on each of us because yeah, like the big structures aren't going to be there, I don't think, in the same way. Like I think we're already seeing that. I think that's already kind of maybe been true, but we didn't really realize it for the last little bit of time. And now we're kind of getting caught up on that and like, oh yeah, the government is like not working in the way that like maybe we wanted or thought that it should. And we can get scared about that, or we can get really empowered about being like, I can create the world that I want in my like little immediate ecosystem and with my friends and my family and like the communities that I'm drawn to that are close and tangible. And I think that's really amazing and powerful because that brings us back into our bodies also. Instead of like looking at this global thing that we can't even really comprehend. And like people probably might not like this, but like thinking about all of these issues all over the world that are so numerous that we actually don't, unless we have like money and you're like supporting people, which is incredible if that is what you're called to do. But it's not that tangible for most of us. Like just like feeling heartbroken about everything, I don't think creates a better world. I think like being in ourselves and like showing up to our actual lives and doing things there create a better world. So I think this is going to be good for us.
Yeah.
And maybe my own like lines influence how I think about this. I don't know the lines that I have, but I'm like, I don't know. I think it's fine.
Yeah.
We'll
No,
see.
I totally feel the same, which I know is like I don't like to tell everyone because I don't know everyone agrees, but it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, I really do feel that we can often make the most impact, yeah, in our direct immediate lives versus like, yeah, being sort of swept up in like everything that's going around the world. Like, yeah. So
Yeah, you know, if you have a different way of viewing it, that's also valid for you. It's just like each of us do have our own system and our own wiring
yeah,
of like where our energy can go and like actually be beneficial for us and the world.
right.
Thank you. Like we've gone in so many different directions, and I'm really grateful to have you on and to have this conversation. And I feel like I learned so much. And yeah, do you have any final thoughts or words that you want to share?
I think I feel pretty complete. Yeah, I loved where this conversation went, and yeah, I loved all the questions you asked. Yeah, I think I feel pretty good about everything I've shared.
And where can people find you? I'll have everything linked in the show notes, but if you want to just share the best way to get in touch.
Yeah, so the best way to get in touch, my Instagram is at Mystical Heretic, and then my Substack is also Mystical Heretic. Substack. And I also have a website as well, mystical-heretic.com.
Amazing. And those will all be linked if you want to tap into Chiara's work and her writing and her thoughts and her offerings. Yeah, there's a lot there. So thank you so much. Very grateful. And yeah,